Today, Donald Trump pulled the plug on the global warming scam, not just the junk science, but more importantly, the entire industry that is built up around it, of bureaucrats and diplomats and politicians and lobbyists and people seeking grants for this and that and taxes. Here, take a listen.
The United States will withdraw from the Paris Climate Accord Thank you. Thank you. But begin negotiations to re-enter either the Paris Accord or in really entirely new transaction.
Doesn't go quite far enough in my books. He says he's open to renegotiating it. I mean, you can't be half pregnant. Either the whole thing's a scam or it isn't. You can't make America great again if you believe economic decisions could be made by the UN, and that's what any global warming agreement would be. It's really an economic plan, a plan of taxes and penalties and subsidies. It really doesn't have anything to do with the weather. I mean, seriously, honestly, do you actually think that by raising a carbon tax, you could change the weather? Do you really, really believe that? Does anyone really believe that? If so, you are not a scientist, you believe in superstition. Because not even the United Nations' own Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, as it's called, not even they argue that their plans will change the weather. The most they claim is that if you do all the things they ask of you, and all the taxes and the bans and the subsidies, that over the course of the next century, 100 years, global warming will be a fraction of a degree less. It won't stop. It'll just slow down by a few months over a century, imperceptibly, over the course of a century. And that's their guess. So either you think that's a scam or you don't. I think Donald Trump thinks it's a scam. Trump went far enough, I think, and it's wonderful. It's a sign that despite the media insanity, despite the insane Russia conspiracy theories of the official media, despite the diabolical shrieking of pop culture mascots, Trump still remembers who elected him and why. He wasn't elected by Kathy Griffin, that weirdo with the bloody severed head. He was elected by coal miners in West Virginia and frackers in Pennsylvania and steel workers in Ohio and auto workers in Michigan. But it's not just that Trump remembers who won it for him. It's that he's from New York, and so he's always on alert for scams and cons. New York City is a city that in some ways is or was synonymous with being mugged. If you don't know who the sucker is, it's probably you. So let me read to you a few of his comments about global warming going back years before he ran for office, just to show that he doesn't believe the global warming baloney. This is a tweet from 3 years ago. He said, Russia is on the move in the Ukraine, Iran is nuking up, and Libya is run by al-Qaeda, yet Obama is busy issuing climate change warnings. He's right. Here's another. 3.5 years ago, he said, the weather has been so cold for so long that the global warming hoaxsters were forced to change the name to climate change to keep money flow. He's done variations on that theme a lot. It's hilarious. He always points out that it's about the money. Here's one more tweet from back in 2013. He said, the con artists changed the name from global warming to climate change when global warming was no longer working and credibility was lost. See, Trump is tweeting as a street-smart New Yorker, warning you not to play the shell game. You know what I mean by those shell games? Because it's rigged. Don't be scammed. Do you think that Trump suddenly is going to lose that natural New York skepticism and believe in global warming, especially when global warming is designed to scam America more than any other country? That's not my opinion. That's a fact. Do you ever wonder why all this climate baloney is based on the year 1990, as in emissions are measured plus or minus from 1990? I mean, the Kyoto Protocol was written in 1997. Why didn't they use that date? Paris was 18 months ago. Why didn't they use that date? Well, the answer is a trick, a con. Because 1990 was right when Europe was at its most polluting heights. The UK had not yet decommissioned many of its coal-fired power plants. It was about to, though. And all of Eastern Europe's Soviet-era factories, inefficient, outdated, high emissions, they were all still operating in 1990, but they were all about to be shut down and replaced with modern Western-style factories. So my point is, if you were in 1997 deciding your baseline year, you would know from 7 years of hindsight that 1990 was your biggest emissions year ever in history for Europe, and that you already had huge reductions in emissions from 1990 to 1997, just from things you were doing for other reasons. Whereas the United States wasn't about to shut down its Soviet-era factories. It didn't have any. It was already clean and modern. So if you were trying to build a system and get all the countries in the world to reduce their emissions, you would start when you'd start. But if you were trying to rig your baseline year to 1990, you'd already have a head start in hand, as in Europe wouldn't have to shut down a single factory or take a single car off the roads to meet its continental target. It was allowed to have a Europe-wide target. Only America and Canada would actually have to make cuts. Isn't that a scam? And of course, Kyoto had a plan. If such cuts couldn't be made, no problem, Kyoto Protocol said. America, or Canada, would just have to pay countries like China carbon credits. It was a scam. It was rigged against America from the beginning, like that shell game, which is why the entire United States Senate voted against the Kyoto Protocol, 95-0. Not even one single Democrat voted for the Kyoto Protocol. Did you know that? Oh, by the way, OPEC countries were exempt from Kyoto. Yeah, oil producers like Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Iran, exempt. It was all basically a tax grab for North American money. Now, the U.S. has resisted that tax. Al Gore probably would have implemented it, but he lost, thank goodness. And isn't it interesting that for all of his years of talk, the years when Obama controlled the White House and both houses of Congress, he did not bring in a carbon tax. He didn't even try. He wasn't that crazy. Sure, he brought in a bunch of bullying EPA laws. Actually, not laws so much as edicts, just executive orders, because he knew not even Democrats in Congress would go along with it, certainly not the Senate. Still, he hurt America, I mean, as he promised he would.
If somebody wants to build a coal-powered plant, they can. It's just that it will bankrupt them because they're going to be charged a huge sum for all that greenhouse gas that's being emitted.
Now, that was awful, but Hillary Clinton campaigned on going even further.
I'm the only candidate which has a policy about how to bring economic opportunity using clean, renewable energy as the key into coal country, because we're going to put a lot of coal miners and coal companies out of business.
Yeah, can you imagine? Of course, she blames the Russians for hacking the election instead of dumb comments like that. Well, look, her plans to lay off coal workers didn't happen. Donald Trump happened. And lucky for Trump, so much of the global warming scam was just orders and executive moves, not legislation that you would have to repeal. So it's as easy to undo as it was to do. And here's why that's important. See, Obama had declared war on coal, and Obama's allies, not so much Obama himself, had declared war on fracking. But the threat of carbon taxes and regulations was always present. Global warming was a nonstop talking point for anything in America. It was even the excuse Obama used for not attacking ISIS oil tankers.
We don't want to destroy these oil tankers because that's infrastructure that's going to be necessary to support the people when ISIS isn't there anymore. And it's going to create environmental damage.
I've watched that clip 10 times. It still shocks me. So there was a constant drumbeat from the top, a constant warning, a constant risk that Obama and, God forbid, Hillary Clinton would do something one day and things would get worse. It was like having a gun pointed at you if you're an industrialist. Well, now at least that is gone, and the gun is a starter pistol telling American industry of every sort to build, drill, dig, mine. So it's a psychological change mainly, a lifting of the worst regulations in a few cases, and as we told you about Trump's proposed budget, cutting the EPA by 31%, laying off literally thousands of job-killing bureaucrats. That's huge. It's a relief. It's a signal. It's an international signal, too. If you want to be a competitor to the United States now, you can't have a carbon tax on your own goods and services. If you want to sell into the United States now, you can't have a carbon tax. It just prices you out of the market. And if Donald Trump says the global warming emperor has no clothes, are you really going to be the country that insists, no, yes, he does have clothes, global warming clothes? Do you really want to be the last country in the world going down this carbon tax path? There's a mutual dependence. I think codependence is the word psychologists use. When everyone's doing a bad thing together, you give each other moral support, you give each other moral permission. But when one guy finally says, I'm sick of this, it's not cool anymore, and leaves, everyone else says, oh, well, maybe it wasn't a good idea. It's the same way the Brexit vote in the UK made it okay for all manner of other Eurosceptics to fly their flag. Trump's election itself shows it's possible to dissent, to change course. Australia already repealed its carbon tax. Now Eastern European countries are reconsidering their global warming commitments under the Paris Agreement in light of America's stance. And of course, OPEC wasn't going to do anything anyways. They're just mad that their chief rival for energy production now won't hobble itself. You know, America now produces more oil than Saudi Arabia because of the fracking boom in Texas and North Dakota. Look at some of these foreign countries, though, furious that Trump wants to make America more competitive than them. Here's a story in the Daily Mail, and it's a great roundup of other countries. In a Berlin speech, Chinese Premier Li Keqiang said that fighting climate change is a global consensus and an international responsibility. China in recent years has stayed true to its commitments, said Li, speaking in Berlin Wednesday. Yeah, no. China is the biggest carbon dioxide emitter in the world by far. American CO2 emissions have fallen for 10 years straight, by contrast. China's are growing every year. Not that I care about carbon dioxide. It's harmless. It's all the real pollution in China that's a worry, like smog. But for China to lecture anyone on the environment or even on CO2 is pure comedy. They're just mad America won't be conned into paying them for carbon credits or whatever other schemes and scams they had cooked up at the UN. Now, the head of the European Commission couldn't contain his anti-Americanism. Here's what he said. He said, Trump doesn't comprehensively understand the terms of the accord, though European leaders tried to explain the process for withdrawing to him in clear, simple sentences during summit meetings last week, Jean-Claude Juncker said in Berlin. It looks like that attempt failed, Juncker said. This notion, I am Trump, I am American, America first, and I am getting out, that is not going to happen. Yeah, I just think it happened. I think Trump completely does understand the global warming scam. He understands that it is a scam. Here are dozens of comments Trump has made over the years on global warming. I think he's pretty much figured it out, don't you? But yeah, if Kathy Griffin's severed head gambit won't convince Trump to change course, maybe some anemic EU bureaucrat sneering at America will do the trick. Of course, the worst are the globalist corporations. Here's them, and I quote, American corporate leaders have also appealed to the businessman turned president to stay in the global warming scam. They include Apple, Google, and Walmart. Even fossil fuel companies such as ExxonMobil, BP, and Shell say the United States should abide by the deal. Hey guys, you can stay in the deal if you want. Hey guys, if you love the deal, why don't you pay carbon taxes voluntarily? I'm sure the rest of us would love your free tax dollars. You liars. It's super gross, I know. That's the final march of the left, the long march through our institutions. They went through academia, they went through the media, they went through the courts. They now are marching through even industrial companies, even oil companies, even Rex Tillerson, the Secretary of State who used to run Exxon. He wanted to stay in. Those guys are gross. Even the Pope is upset with Donald Trump about global warming. I wish the Pope tweeted as much about the fate of Christians in the Middle East who are facing real genocide from Muslim jihadists. I wish he tweeted as much about Christian genocide as he does about the fake non-genocide, non-Christian issue of global warming. But listen to Canada's own climate cultist, Catherine McKenna. Shallow, Kardashian-like, cliches, zero science background, a token quota appointee to cabinet by her own acknowledgement. Here she is today in Canada's state broadcaster. The state broadcaster is in mourning, but McKenna isn't in mourning. She is in denial, and I quote, Canada's just going to keep marching on like the rest of the world, McKenna told an event in Toronto. Just going to keep marching on like undead zombies, like cult members, the last to leave, the last to get a message. Even by her own terms, it doesn't make sense to stay in the climate cult. If America pulls out of it, makes no sense for our economic integration with the States, makes no sense in terms of saving the planet. If China, the US, OPEC are all doing whatever they want, it makes no sense environmentally. But she's a cult member, as is the rest of Trudeau's senior advisors. They're going to hurt our country with their carbon taxes and cap and trades and banning of cheap, clean, plentiful power and their subsidies for wind turbine schemes and solar panels. They're going to hurt all of us, but they themselves will just be fine. You bet they'll keep marching, or rather jetting, to the next luxurious UN global warming meeting. The next one's in Bonn, Germany. Trump just did last call. But for McKenna and Trudeau, the party never stops. That's an excerpt from my daily TV show, The Ezra Levant Show. Normally it's behind a paywall, but I thought you'd like this video, so we put it on YouTube. If you want to subscribe to watch The Daily Show every day, including always 2 interviews a day, and I read my hate mail, just click on this screen and become a premium member.